Okay, one of the things that I found over the years is that if you had a format to write a paper, you would be able, or some sort of scaffolding, you would be able to just drop and load your ideas. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a piece of cardstock and cut it down the middle, and you're going to divide kind of in your head the front side of it into three kind of compartments, and we're going to make an outline for it. And what you're going to do at the very top is you're going to go ahead and you're going to actually you're going to name this components of an essay. And I'm going to type this the same time as I'm going through it with you so that you can see as I'm building it and I'm describing it. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through and COMPONENTS. See, I don't type real well either, so just kind of go with the flow on this. Anyway, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to build an outline in every time that you write a paper from now on, no matter when you write it or how you write it, it has to have the same things in it every time. An essay is multiple paragraphs. It has a focus and it has to have specific academic details. And without the academic details in it, you're not going to have an essay. No matter what you write and how beautiful it is and you turn it in, you're going to end up with the same thing. So let's just break down the components of the essay. The first thing is that you are going to have in an essay, you have to have an introduction. And in your introduction, you have to have certain characteristics. And I am sure that you've seen these before. INTRO. Wow. I'll probably have to redo this. INTRODUCTION. There it is. All right. So, in an introduction, you have the very first thing that you have to have absolutely is an attention getter. And I use this one, the one that I use always when I'm in class and I'm talking to people, is I look at them and say, Fred Gomez Carrasco, and you all probably don't know who he is, took 7 people and wrapped them around him. As he took those 7 people, he put them inside 2 chalkboards that in the like a teepee style, and he put those 7 people and himself inside it. He buffered the inside of the chalkboards with books so that as he was escaping from the Huntsville State Prison in 1974, the bullets would actually go through the books and the chalkboard, and if they went through something, they would go through the bodies that were around him rather than kill him. True story, and I've got your attention, and that's called an anecdote. And when you have one of those, you're going to be able to have some sort of, it's like a little bitty story or something that gets people going. But basically what you're doing is you're going to have a provocative statement, or you're going to have a quotation, or you're going to have a question. I do not recommend you use a question. I don't like questions. I liken this to the idea when somebody says, have you, the answering service business years ago, people used to say, Dr. Onsel does answering service, can you hold please? And to be real honest with you, I wasn't interested in holding. So I would say, no, I don't want to hold. More especially if you have a screaming kid in the background, screaming at you, and you've got they're sick, and it's just, ah! So you'd have all that mess. So I wouldn't ask a question because you're just engaging the reader. So the next thing you're going to do is after you get your attention getter to start off your paper, is you're going to do something called a factoid. And a factoid is just getting the reader on the same page. And you're going to do that because you're going to do historical background, or you may do an anecdote where you could tell a story, or you're going to have some sort of vivid details, Or you may define something or give terms so that we all know what you're talking about. More especially if you're doing some sort of a literature piece, you need, like I was listening to 610 the other day on the radio, and they were talking about elite quarterbacks. Well, the guest speaker wasn't able to answer the question because he didn't know what the term elite quarterback was. And sometimes you have to define that. So when you're writing a paper, make sure that you and your reader and everybody are on the same page. The next thing you're going to do is add a thesis statement. And this is the focus of the paper. And thesis statements are not difficult to use or to actually create. Thesis statements are actually very, very easy. What you're going to do is take part of the prompt plus your answer, and that equals a prompt. That equals a thesis. For instance, if it was, how does determination enable people to succeed? Determination enables people to succeed because, and what I like to do is right here, I like to put because. And the reason I do that is I know that that's my reasons coming back after it. Now, I'm going to also suggest at this point that you know that you have to have at least 2 reasons. Do not ever, 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 ever try to write a paper and only give 1 reason. Actually, 3 reasons are best. And when you go to the other pieces, because there's 9 different styles of essays, when you go to each specific essay style, you'll know how many and what order the reasons and things need to go to. So that is it in a nutshell in your introduction. So once you have, and it shouldn't be any more than about 3 or 5 sentences. You don't need to have anything, it doesn't have to be loud like that. So here's the next one. You're going to have body paragraphs, and it doesn't really matter how many body paragraphs you have. They're all the same. You have to have a minimum of at least 2, but you need to really have as many as covers the topic. So you might have to have, as you get further on into your college studies, you may have to have 10 or 15. It just depends. And that's one of the things that you need to look at when you look at the prompt. And you look at the professor and you say, how many words? What am I looking at? The professor's going to look at you and say as many as covers the topic. So don't try to cut yourself short by doing the minimum, because that's only going to make matters worse. Every single body paragraph must have a topic sentence. And that topic sentence is part of your reason. You then absolutely have to have some sort of detail, or what I like to say is show me what it looks like. You have to explain what you were talking about. So you're going to have a basic topic sentence, and then you need to explain what you were talking about. And it's not really that hard. Just take whatever's in your head and write it down like you would actually say it. And then once you go through the revise and edit process, then after you do that, you can sit there and make it academically correct. The hardest thing is when you're trying to sit there and write it and you're trying to write it perfect the first time. Don't try to write it perfect the first time. I've never seen that work. Then you're going to have to do some sort of support. You need to give some sort of details on what you were talking about. So you're going to explain it, and then the details, you're going to show me what that looks like in real life. And then you're going to do some sort of text evidence. And that, as you get further on when you get further on in your studies, you're going to notice that text evidence could be a a quote, it could be a passage, it could be all sorts of different stuff, but it's going to be something that someone wrote or you've researched, and usually you do research to be able to do this. Okay? So then you go down to the next one, and every paper has to have a conclusion. And when you have the conclusion, you need to make sure that you're not introducing no new information. So when you get there, you can't start a new process by a whole new essay. You're trying to close up shop. So when you get to your conclusion, you want to make sure that you're closing up shop and you're taking the reader through all the appropriate steps of what you've talked about, and now you want to wind it up, and I can look at it and go, wow, that was a good paper. One thing you don't want to do is not have a conclusion, because then what it's like is you're walking off the side of a mountain and you just drop off. And when the reader has something like that, it's kind of like a what happened feeling, and that's really not good. The first thing that you need to do in a conclusion is have your concluding statement. And if you can't write a concluding statement, flip your thesis. And what I mean by that is on your thesis, you have your answer, and then you're going to add some sort of a transition verb, or a verb that connects, because you have to have a subject and a verb for each sentence. And then you're going to do part of the prompt. And it's real simple. You just put the little pieces together. Now, one of the things that I do right here is that on your answer, so that it doesn't become redundant, I use synonyms. SONOMY. Yes, I didn't do that right, but it's it. I use synonyms for the answer, and I think that that's important, because when you're writing, you don't want to use the same words over and over again, and that makes it easy for you to write it. Okay, so then after you get your concluding statement in there, you've got to be able to give some sort of information to the reader, so that we're winding things up. And what we do is we usually call that, you'll hear that in terms, you'll hear somebody say, you need to have a power close. Some big wham, here it comes. And a power close is either a prediction, a suggestion, a quotation, or a call to action. And those are the four things that you would choose one that matches with the rest of your paper, and you would put it on there and just add to it. And then what you're going to do after you finish looking through this, then you're going to do revise and edit, and that's the flip side of the card. And what you just I suggest that you just handwrite this on a piece of cardstock. Keep it with you, so that every time that you write a paper, you know that you have to have all of these things. Every single one of these has to show up on in an essay, or it's not considered an academic school essay. It's not an email. It's not a text to a friend. It's not a note in the hallway. So you have to make sure you have all these pieces. At the bottom of the card, I usually tell everybody there's a couple of no's that you want to put in there. First of all, you do not use contractions. And then I would not use first person if unless you're right there, and you never second. You, your, them, you, your, all that business, you never use second person when you're writing. So, never second person. Okay? I hope this helped. I know a lot of people have asked me to do this. It's kind of crazy, some of the things that you come up with after all these years, but I know that it works, and it works well. So if you want to bring me your card after you've looked at this, I can laminate it for you, and then you can just use it for the rest of time. Thanks again for coming to Components of Essays.